We are gathered here in this courtroom today to discuss the merits of Batman and who is the best Batman. Arguing the case for Kevin Conroy, the Honorable Robert Bebe Anderson, Esquire.
Your Honor, we are unfortunately gathered here today to discuss something that I think has been solved quite a while ago. We're here to talk about who the greatest Batman is. Throughout film and TV, there have been many mans and many bats. And I'm here to tell you and to defend this point to my death who the best Batman is. And that is Kevin Conroy. Kevin Conroy is surely the greatest Batman. Not only has he been Batman for the longest amount of time, 20 years, 8 different series, he is also one of the first actors of the Batman to create 2 distinct voices for not only when he's portraying Batman, but when he is portraying Bruce Wayne. Up until this point, the voice has been pretty much the same. If you look no further than Adam West, he is goofy the whole time. But I'm not here to throw shade at Adam West or Michael Keaton, for I do think they did a great job. I'm here to tell you that Kevin Conroy has done the best job. It's why he's still getting work. When you think of Batman's voice, I'd be shocked if you didn't hear Kevin Conroy. The animated Batman is Batman without limitations. Kevin Conroy, also really nice, it seems like. He never yelled at anyone on set in his recording booth. He never yelled at that sound operator guy. Not only has he been in so many Batman cartoons, he is also the voice of probably one of the other best pieces of Bat media that has ever been created, and that is the Batman Arkham series. The video games, published by Warner Brothers, directed by a few different studios, but has reunited Kevin Conroy's Batman and Mark Hamill's Joker in a more playable manner. There we have seen them become unhinged. Without the paradigms of a children's cartoon, we get to see them in a space that's a little bit more grown up. I hope that this point is no longer in contention after this video podcast series hybrid, because I think it is almost silly not to unanimously agree at this point in our lives that Kevin Conroy is the Batman.
Arguing the merits of Michael Keaton, the deplorable Michael Burdge.
Your Honor, this is a big debate. There should be no personal judgments brought into this. Tastes should be excluded. There are many layers to Batman. Bruce Wayne, Batman, who Bruce Wayne actually is, who Bruce Wayne pretends to be in front of people. All of these must be taken into account when discussing who truly is the best Batman. Furthermore, it should be stated, Michael Keaton is, in fact, the best Batman. I will go into why, and we will discuss exactly why there can be no other choice than Michael Keaton. Batman Returns. My associate will attempt to discourage you and the people of the court by claiming that the fighting style in the Michael Keaton films is not good or not up to par with what he believes to be flair. This doesn't matter. Bruce Wayne is a crazy person who pretends to be sane. Michael Keaton is a crazy person who pretends to be sane. It's perfect. You want to get nuts? Come on, let's get nuts. Now that's Batman. It should also be noted that Michael Keaton has no sidekicks in these 2 movies. It's a one-man show, baby, because Batman is enough for these villains. He doesn't need any help. And so, Your Honor, I close my statement with this. Which is better, sitting down and watching 2 films that, together, add up to less than 4 hours and enjoying some of the greatest exploits the Dark Knight has ever gone on in his whole Caped Crusade, or sitting down and watching every single episode of every single season of an animated series that was canceled, might I add. Michael Keaton chose not to return as Batman in the Joel Schumacher film Batman Forever. He laid down his cape and cowl. The cape and cowl was ripped away from Kevin Conroy in the animated series. And yes, he did go on to be in the video games. But I don't think that we are here to argue that video games are actually art. And so, Your Honor, I rest my case. Michael Keaton for life.
Well, gentlemen, I declare the case of the best Batman in session. Mr. Burdge, will you present your arguments, please?
Thank you, Your Honor. My arguments are plain. Michael Keaton is, for lack of a better term, the GOAT. The greatest of all time. As I've said in my opening statements, he is one of the best Batmen, Bruce Waynes, and Bruces. His Batman is formidable, guarded. His Bruce Wayne, snooty, silver-spooned. But his Bruce, soft, unknowing, unsure of himself. These are things that are defining to a character. Michael Keaton's Batman allows him to grow and move on. He's an amazing actor, both not just in voice, but also in physicality and what he can do. He's doing so much, not just with his voice, but also with his body as an actor.
Okay. Mr. Anderson, your opening arguments?
Thank you, Your Honor. As I mentioned in my opening statements, I have no qualms with Michael Keaton. Michael Keaton as a live-action Batman has done a tremendous job. And his alleged return to the series, I personally am very excited for. But Kevin Conroy, I must say, is the best Batman. In the pantheon of Batman, he stands tall. He has been Batman and Bruce Wayne for the longest amount of time, across multiple mediums in the animated and digital space. He did have his own foray in the live-action space, so he has done it all, but he does reign supreme as Bruce Wayne and Batman for his time doing it, and also being the creator of creating different voices for Bruce Wayne and Batman, the originator of this concept. And across the digital medium, we've seen him bust every villain, fight almost every person in the Rogues Gallery, and stand supreme. I think it is hard to argue that Kevin Conroy is the superior, not only Batman, but Bruce Wayne.
Interesting point. I think, gentlemen, what we need to begin with is, are we debating who is the best man to play Batman, or are we arguing who is the best representation of this character? We have to know that this is originally a comic book character. So are we talking about who is the best actor to play this comic book character, or are we just talking about who is the best personification of him on screen?
Your Honor, if I may.
Yes, go ahead.
I do believe that what we are here to talk about, removing personal agenda and personal judgments, personal qualms, personal anythings. I believe that it is at least my duty, and I cannot speak for my associate over here, but it is my duty to present why Michael Keaton is, quite bluntly, the best Batman in general. The comic book is its own thing, and cartoons are their own thing. Why Kevin Conroy is even in competition in this courtroom is beyond me, Your Honor. But I do defend my associate's right to be able to defend Kevin Conroy, who is a fine voice actor. But Michael Keaton in Batman, Tim Burton's Batman in particular, kind of helped Kevin Conroy's Batman even become what it is. The entire animated series of Batman is based off of the sounds and aesthetics of Tim Burton's two Batman films. This is found in the theme in general. So I would say that Michael Keaton presented the first kind of look of darkness that the Caped Crusader could have in film to allow the animated series to become the juggernaut that it was. In short, Michael Keaton walked so that the animated series could fly. And even if Kevin Conroy was considered to be a better Batman than Michael Keaton, he would owe it all to Michael Keaton.
Point of clarification from your own argument, is it that he owes it all to Michael Keaton? Or is it that the cartoon owes everything to Tim Burton, the director of this, who created the aesthetic? Certainly, Michael Keaton brought his own flair to the role, but the direction was by Tim Burton.
Absolutely, Your Honor. I couldn't agree more. And I do believe that if we were to discuss who is the best Batman world creators, this would be a better argument to even have between Tim Burton and the creators of the show, the animated series. However, I believe, at least from my point of view, that we are here to talk about Batman the Man. To answer your question from before more pointedly, I think we are zoning in on what the person who is performing as Batman can be. Obviously, Michael Keaton is not Bruce Wayne. He is not Batman. But what does he bring to the character that allows for that Batman to stand out? And I do think that the world that each Batman encompasses, which is attributed to the director, the writers, production designers, all of that, is part and parcel with what they are bringing. Am I saying that Michael Keaton is responsible for the look and tone of Tim Burton's Batmans? No. But in the context of the discussion that we're having here, I think that they are one and the same. His Batman does not exist without the world, and that world would not exist without his Batman.
It's an interesting perspective. Mr. Anderson, in Mr. Burdge's opening statements, he stated that Michael Keaton is the best Batman because Michael Keaton is, quote unquote, an insane person. Because Bruce Wayne, Batman, is an insane person. Do you agree with this perspective? That's, from what I gather, that's kind of a read that's been applied to the character over time. Originally, the comic book superhero was just fighting crime. And it's only through a more modern lens that we start to ascribe these, feelings towards him, that he is attacking people who are maybe left behind by society, and that's maybe not a good thing. How do you feel about that, Mr. Anderson, and where does Kevin Conroy fit into all of that?
I do. I actually find that my defendant's criticism or critique or even just nuanced lens that he looks at Michael Keaton is correct, though. Tim Burton has gone on record as saying that he was attracted to the character of Batman because he's a bit of a crazy person, and dressing up as a bat and fighting crime is something an insane person would do. So that interpretation of the character is very alive and well in the film. I totally agree with that. I do think Kevin Conroy, though, plays a character that is more consistent with what Batman is across his many comic books, on-screen portrayals, past, future, and present. I think Kevin Conroy really presents to us a character that is the detective. He really gives us a character who is trying to solve crimes, fighting being a means to the end, except for when you get to see his character pushed to his very limits. In times where he's facing down the Joker, he has to wrestle with the fact that is he using his brains or his brute strength? And wrestling with that dichotomy is always very interesting to see. What do we see Michael Keaton wrestle with? I'm not always quite sure. And I will say, as a believer in evolution, just because Michael Keaton predates Kevin Conroy as Batman does not make him the superior interpretation of that character. Is Michael Keaton's DNA found in Kevin Conroy's Batman? It would be hard to argue. And I'm not here to say that is not the case. What I will say, though, is Kevin Conroy took these genomes, these seeds, and has created something that when you think of Batman in your mind's eye, when you try and hear Batman's voice in your head, it's one of the most famous voice actors in animated media.
Mr. Anderson, I'll remind you that there may be children who are watching this program, and maybe keep the talk of DNA in whose DNA may be in who to a minimum, please. Mr. Burdge,
I accept.
Why is it you're arguing for a man, an actual physical representation on the screen? Why is it so important that Batman be translated into a physical role in real life, as opposed to an animated adaptation, which is much more true to the source material?
That's an interesting question, Your Honor, and I thank you for it. By the way, you're looking very great today, I might add. Should have said that at the beginning.
I object.
Sustained. Mr. Burdge, please stop flirting with me.
Sorry, Your Honor. Just couldn't help it.
Please get back to your argument.
I would argue that the real personness of Batman is not required. But I would say that in dealing with a character whose defining trait is that he has no superpowers, as opposed to other comic book characters, that his physicality is something that is championed in his own character personality. So by having someone actually perform this on the screen, I think is inherently much more impressive than a cartoon. Now, don't get me wrong. Cartoons are great. Everyone knows that on Story Screen, I am the largest lover of animation. I love animation with all of my soul. And I love the Batman animated series, and I love Kevin Conroy as the voice actor of Batman and Bruce Wayne. However, it pales in comparison to Michael Keaton's performance facially, physically, being stuck in the first iteration of that Cal suit, which we all know has gone through decades of upgrades and still is pretty uncomfortable. Yet he's still able to pull off with those pursed, pouty lips of his and that amazing Mr. Mom voice. I think that his physicality that he lends to it is the best of all of the Batmans, and not just Kevin Conroy. I think George Clooney, Christian Bale, Ben Affleck, and Val Kilmer all praise at the feet of Michael Keaton. I do think that Val Kilmer's Bruce Wayne is something very interesting, but I think Michael Keaton's Bruce Wayne just blows him out of the water. And when we're talking about who is Batman, we are talking about all three of those idioms. We are talking about Batman, Bruce Wayne, and Bruce. And I think that the physicality that Michael Keaton's performance brings to all three of those characters, the questionable quirks of the eyebrow, the punching and the beating, again, the beautiful pursed lips, I think that they all come into play.
Okay, Mr. Verge. Mr. Anderson, did you have a rebuttal?
I do. Your Honor, I ask you, have you ever wanted to be Batman? At any point in your life, childhood, present, have you ever wanted to be the cowl-caped crusader that fights crime?
I was a bit more of a Wolverine guy, but a little too tall for that, unfortunately.
I'd be the right size. But I would say there is only one actor that can be your avatar in the digital world of Batman. We have not really touched on the Batman Arkham games, where you, as a player, can truly become Batman. Wear Batman yourself. In these games, you go through his traumas, you see his parents die, You go through his victories, you go through his failures, and you even have a psychotic breakdown in the third one, and it's really cool. But I do think that there's something to be said about the only Batman that is so close, you are so close to being this Batman in this moment, is the Kevin Conroy Batman.
Mr.
Your Honor, if I may.
Yes, Mr. Burdge?
Very quickly. I would argue that in the Arkham games, Kevin Conroy is not Batman. You are Batman, which is exactly what my associate was just explaining. Kevin Conroy may play the voice of Batman, but you are in control of his physicality and what he does.
I have one final question for Mr. Anderson before we go to closing statements, and that is, as I was saying with Mr. Burdge thinks it's very important that the Batman be a real physical actor. What is it about the animated medium that you think is so vital that you are willing to call Kevin Conroy the greatest Batman? Certainly you can't separate him from being in a cartoon. What are the unique advantages of that medium in terms of portraying Batman?
That's a very good question, and I thank you, Your Honor. Well, Michael Keaton has only been Batman for the on-screen time equivalent of 5 hours, 6 hours max. Whereas Kevin Conroy has been Batman for many, 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 many more hours. He's clocked in as Batman for many more hours than Michael Keaton.
Objection, Your Honor.
In terms of
I think we all know that the size of the boat is not what's important.
Experience does play a role into these decisions. One of them certainly does have more experience than the other, and I think that's worth noting. Objection overruled.
Permission to continue, Your Honor?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
In terms of the advantages of the animated and digital medium, we get to see Batman go into many more different adventures and fight many more villains that wouldn't really translate to on-screen as well. For example, characters like the Mad Hatter, at least in the time period that these movies were coming out, the Michael Keaton, Tim Burton movies, may not have been as interesting. Or even characters like the Calendar Man may not have been interpreted as well into these mediums as in these animated adventures, where they can go to Arkham Asylum and come back and see them go on crazy zanier adventures. To be in this animated medium, we can make Batman go on pretty much any adventure, and still they find a way to keep it grounded. Being able to blend sorcery with Ra's al Ghul, being able to blend, all the different adventures that Batman has been on throughout the many, many years that he's been alive in our culture, I think is only a thing you can do in the animated medium. And it's tremendous. And also, Kevin Conroy's Batman is able to have a legacy with... he also was Batman in the Justice League. He also was Batman in Batman Beyond. Interpretation of that character that we've really only seen 1 or 2 times. So we didn't have to wait for Michael Keaton to get old to get to these legacy-like content, to create this legacy of having one voice actor, one consistent voice actor at the seat of Batman. Because of an animated medium, we can traverse 180 years of Batman in such a short period of time, in all our lifetimes. I think that's something very special. So not only has he been Batman for the longest amount of time, but in the continuity of the show, he's been Batman for decades. Almost as long as Batman's been Batman in our own world. And that's pretty cool, if you ask me.
All right, gentlemen, I think you both made some pretty interesting arguments in this courtroom today. Now it's time for your closing statements. Mr. Burdge, are you prepared to give your closing argument?
I am, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
My closing argument is a simple one. Michael Keaton is a very talented man and deserves our respect. At least the respect that we should give to him at the very beginning of the idea of answering the question that is on the tip of our tongues today. Who is the best Batman? Is it Kevin Conroy? Perhaps. Should it be Kevin Conroy because of the world surrounding Kevin Conroy and the time that Kevin Conroy has put in? I would argue not. I would argue that someone just being Batman for a single film that is 2 hours long can yield the correct talent and thorough just bravado that would require someone to be the best Batman. I don't think that time should play into it. I don't think the performances surrounding them should play into it. The bad guys that Michael Keaton fights against are some of the best cinematic villains that have arose in the Batman series. Of course, better interpretations have occurred, but I think anybody would be hard-pressed to say that there is a better Catwoman or Penguin in those movies. But that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about Batman. And I do believe, just as my associate, I think, would agree with me, is that Batman is a very special character. And it takes a very special type of person to be able to portray not just Batman, but again, Bruce Wayne and Bruce. And to do these things differently, yet make them make sense as all the same person. And I think that that has never worked more splendidly than with Michael Keaton.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I will, if you don't mind, I would like to stare at my associate while he makes his closing arguments like Tucker Carlson.
It is unorthodox, but I don't see anything against it in the official court rule books at this time.
Thank you very much, Your Honor.
Mr. Anderson, are you prepared to give your closing arguments?
I am, sir.
You may
Thank
go
you.
ahead.
It's been an honor to speak with you, my honor, but also with Michael Burdge as well. To have a discussion about the two probably greatest men to play the Batman has been a joy for me, and I enjoy doing it. And I do agree with the opposition that the best on-screen Batman is Michael Keaton. I totally agree. But I just find it hard-pressed to deny the fact that Kevin Conroy is the greatest Batman. For the legacy he's bestowed upon us, for the years of service he's given the character and the fans, the Comic-Cons he's been to, the comic books he's signed, the roles he's played, the roles he continues to play, being able to go toe-to-toe with Mark Hamill's Joker is nothing short of a miracle. I almost don't think we deserve Kevin Conroy to have been this character for so long. He could have set sail a long time ago, but I'm glad that he stayed with us. And I find it hard-pressed to find many people who, when they hear the Dark Knight's voice, it is not Kevin Conroy's. I end my time.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. That concludes our arguments for today. I will deliberate and we'll be back with my judgment shortly. Thank you. Court is adjourned until I come back. Court is now back in session. I'm here to give my judgment on who the best Batman is. Mr. Burdge, while your arguments were convincing to a degree, I felt that you failed to convince me that Batman specifically needed to be a real man and not just a character. And Mr. Anderson, you did a spectacular job of showing why Kevin Conroy, through his breadth of work, has been the only Batman that people look for in an animated or digital medium. And any other Batman that has attempted to be animated or voiced by anyone else hasn't made the cut. So I will be ruling in favor of Mr. Anderson and Kevin Conroy. Thank you, everyone, for joining.
Thank you.
Joining us here today. This has been Movie Justice. Court is adjourned.
He pales in comparison to the real GOAT, greatest of all time. Our boy. I froze and forgot his name.
This isn't very good for your case, Mr.
No,
Anderson.
it's not. Kevin Conroy. Can we do it? Can we do it again?
Wow.
The greatest of all time.
I
yet
know. I got nervous.
You struggle to recall
I got
him.
nervous.
I hope that you have better arguments than this, Mr. Anderson.
So we can't do another take of that? I'm genuinely asking. We can't do another take of that?
Tim's in charge.
Are there
Tim.
takes? Are there takes
There
in
can be takes.
court?
There can be takes, but I honestly leave it up to you, Tim. 100%. You're in charge here.
Can I please get a mulligan for the first movie Justice, please?
The jurors have already seen your opening statement. If you want to try it again, then go ahead. We can try to strike it from the record, but I don't know if that's possible.
Oh, there you go.
Thank
Straight
you.
from the
Thank
record.
you. I appreciate that, Your Honor.
Stenographer, see what you can do.
You got backspace on that thing?
And
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you.
sorry, I should take it again. I thought this would be better. I wanted to do a two-face thing with the coin. Sorry, I gotta do it again. I had this 50-cent piece. I was like, oh shit, I should do
I have one of those here too, I think, somewhere.
Yeah. I got this
I got my Batarang.
I got this.
I got my Blu-ray copy.
Wow.
Yeah.
From like a gas station with plexiglass on the windows at like 2 a.m. as change. I was like, this has to be like some sort of token talisman.